Good morning. It's Teleforum, and it's one of my favorite days because it makes me uncomfortable, and it's about challenging your fears. Dale Reckless, the third Wednesday of every month from MRS Physical Therapy, comes and visits me. And Dale, I got no problem looking like a fool in front of people. People touching me kind of freaks me out. And I want you to know, I feel like we've grown a little bit closer, and I'm a little bit more, because every time you show up, it's like, here's what we're going to do today. Dale Reckless from MRS Physical Therapy. If you want to watch it on our Facebook, and it's on Dale's Facebook. Tell them where your offices are, and then tell them what you're going to do to make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, so if you're listening in, I would suggest if you can get on the Facebook Live, there's a lot of good things to watch today. So we have two offices.
That scares the crap out of you. You know, we're going to make him look like an idiot today, so you guys don't want to miss this. Okay.
We have two offices. One is in Bridgewater, right in the heart of Bridgewater in Stone Point Landing, and that is MRS Physical Therapy, and that number is 724-728-7550. And the other office is in Cranberry, right on Route 19, next to North Park Lounge on Route 19. That is Cranberry Physical Therapy, and that number is 724-591-8121. And you can always reach out to me personally at d.reckless@mrsphysicaltherapy.com, or check out our website, mrsphysicaltherapy.com.
And that's Reckless with an R, not a W.
Reckless with an R.
All right, beware the Ides of March, beware the whims of Dale. What are we doing today? Because I saw you brought in, for people that are not watching this on Facebook, I see orthotics and I see weights, and I'm flashing back to a bad time when I see the weights. What are we doing?
Well, we're going to do some flashbacks to the days of your youth. We're going to be talking about preventing.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about preventing lower body sports injuries. And actually, this talk is going to be geared towards all ages. A lot of it's going to be talking about sports injuries, which you might be thinking about this with your kids, your grandkids, because we're going to do some specific exercises that will help significantly reduce your likelihood of having an injury. So we have an injury prevention program that we do for our young athletes, but we can also adapt it to our older athletes as well. So some of the exercises, I'm not sure actually how you're going to do with them today, Eddie. So I made
God, you're every teacher I ever had handing out a test. Good luck with this.
I made a game plan for today, so we have a couple exercises that you'll have no problem with. There's a couple exercises that I think might be challenging for the older athlete like yourself, but there's ways to adapt these exercises. So if you're listening and watching at home, if you're an older athlete, you can do these at home as well, along with us as I teach you these today. The great thing about these exercises is that they can reduce your likelihood of injury up to 50%, which is a huge deal. They're very simple exercises to do, but to be able to reduce an athlete, whether it's a younger athlete or an older athlete's likelihood of injury up to 50%, I think that's a huge deal.
Not to make light of it at all. An athlete, an older person that gets an injury, it's not the same as a younger person. It's a way bigger step back, and it takes a lot longer to come back, too.
Absolutely. As you get older, the bounce back and the return to activity level takes a lot longer. But even in our young athletes, even younger athletes, research shows it can be very difficult for them to get back to sport. In fact, if you have an ACL tear or something significant like that, your likelihood of re-tearing is 1 in 4. And only about 50% of those athletes get back to their original level of participation. Some people don't even get back to their sport again, about 50% of the time.
Yeah,
so injury prevention is a huge deal, and that's why we're talking about it today. Because if we can prevent some of these injuries and prevent you from getting injured in the first place, then you can go throughout your whole high school career without having to lose a season or taking time off, whether you're a high school athlete, a college athlete, or an older athlete like we are.
Are there more older athletes showing up with sports injuries at this point in your career than there were earlier? Are older, busier, longer?
If you guys listened in last month, we did a special on pickleball.
Yeah.
And so pickleball is a huge growing sport right now. So we're starting to see older athletes getting more involved, which is great, in activities like pickleball. But with that comes some injuries as well. So we are seeing a little bit of an increase of those types of injuries from the older athlete that are kind of getting back into a competitive activity like pickleball that they can participate in. But we are seeing some injuries with that as well. And those, like I talked about last month, if you didn't catch it, you can go back to our Facebook or to the radio's Facebook show, and you can replay that. But we do go over a lot of common injuries for the older athlete that are specific specific to pickleball, whether it be shoulder, wrist, elbow, hip, knee, or ankle. But today's focus is going to be on the lower body injuries, common injuries that we can prevent for our younger athletes. If you're listening at home, this might be your kid or your grandkid that you want us to check out. Or if you're an older athlete, we're going to adapt some of these exercises for things you can do at home.
Do you want to start with the first day? See, last month was fun because you brought the pickleball paddles.
That was a good time.
We got to hit the ball around.
Yeah.
That's fun. This is going to be more like the NCAA rule was when you came back from Christmas, you couldn't officially practice football, but you could run and lift. This is going to be like that. There's nothing going to be fun about this, is there?
Well, what's interesting, when we were kids, we were just, what did we do for injury prevention? Not a whole lot,
Tape
right?
and aspirin to it.
So when we were younger, there really weren't these injury prevention programs available to us. There wasn't the research back behind us. If we were if we had a certain activity that we did, maybe a volleyball or a track athlete, we went and we lifted weights.
You lifted weights and you stretched the muscle groups that were important to you.
Yeah, you did some flexibility stuff, you lifted weights, and you worked on your specific activity, whatever that was. Mm-hmm. If you were a basketball player, maybe you worked on, jumping, or volleyball, same thing. But we didn't really know the specifics of how to work on those things, and that's what injury prevention is. Now we're taking these functional activities and we're teaching people how to do it properly, how to do specific exercises that are shown through research to significantly reduce injuries in these sports.
I knew guys playing football that stretched during stretching. They made it look like they were stretching, that they weren't stretching at all. The information that wasn't available is now available.
And we talk a lot about flexibility, but this is an interesting fact as well. Research shows that flexibility is not the #1 important thing to do for injury prevention. It's actually pretty far down the list.
Okay.
Now, for certain body parts like the ankle, I think flexibility is really important because if you don't have good ankle flexibility, you can run into all sorts of issues with sprains, strains, and even ruptures of the Achilles tendon if you don't have good flexibility. But the other joints, flexibility is not the #1 thing. The #1 things are these dynamic exercises that I'm going to teach you guys today that really help reduce the injury by 50%. Flexibility alone does not reduce your injury likelihood by 50%, but these specific exercises I'm going to show you today do.
All right, do you want to show me my first exercise so I can get good and sweaty?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to run down the chain. I should say run up the chain because we're going to start at the ankle, we're going to go to the knee, then we're going to go to the hip. So we're going to start looking at the ankle, and I'll show you some of the things that I look at the ankle, and then we're going to go to the knee and then the hip, and some common things that happen at the ankle, knee, and hip, and some simple exercises you can do at home. Or I'll give you some of the names, and maybe you can jot it down, and you can tell your kid or your grandkid, hey, are you guys doing this type of exercise? Google it, and maybe something to work on. But important to know these injury prevention group programs. A lot of people do. A lot of people go to sports performance places, which is great. These are exercise groups that people do. So you go to these sports performance places, and they say, what sport do you do? And they say, I play basketball. And they say, okay, you're going to do these exercises.
Here's your folder.
ABC, this is the exercise, which is good. However, research shows that these exercise groups alone are not enough for injury prevention. Injury prevention really happens when you have a systematic program in place where you're getting an individualized evaluation of things we're going to look at today. And that individual evaluation will give you certain specific components that you can do in addition to the group exercises. The group exercises at the sports performance places that you go to are great. However, you need something more in addition to that, and that's the individualized assessment that we do at MRS Physical Therapy and Cranberry Physical Therapy. We can do these sports performance individualized tests for you and show you where your true areas of weakness are and what to work on. If you're just going to a group program without that component, you're missing out on the injury prevention part of that sports performance.
You're not getting all the information that you could absolutely use.
Right, and if you're just doing that group's performance activity, then you might be, without you realizing it, strengthening areas that you don't want to strengthen because you've compensated for the areas that are weak. So if that makes sense, we want to identify the areas that are weak, and then you can work specifically on those components in addition to the group performance exercise programs.
All right, what's the first one? Start slow.
All right, so we're going to come out to the front of the camera so we can do the evaluation here.
Does this involve, for those of you that don't follow this program, a lot of these involve Dale touching my feet, mostly because he knows it absolutely freaks me out. Does this involve touching my feet?
Well, I'm going to have you take your shoes off.
I knew it. That's how it starts, man. Do I need a chair?
Yeah, let's bring the chair out, too.
Take your shoes off. Have another glass of wine. Sure. All right.
And so, this has actually become kind of personal for me recently in a way that, my daughter, she's a basketball player and a volleyball player, and she came to me and she said, Dad, my knee's starting to hurt. And I said, okay, let me take a look at it. And she's 13 years old. And usually around that 13-year-old mark is where we start talking about sports performance and doing this testing, because
that's when Osgood Slaughter starts to hint up.
There's a couple of intrinsic factors that happen that we can't do anything about. So injuries have some intrinsic components, and one of those is gender. So female athletes are more likely to get injured than male athletes. And also, when kids start hitting puberty, that's when hormones start taking place. And there's some research that shows that hormonal changes actually can increase likelihood of injury as well, especially like ACL tears. So I have a daughter that's a basketball and a volleyball athlete. She complains of knee pain, so I do an evaluation of her. I look at her feet, her knees, and her hips, and I realize she has all sorts of things going on that I didn't realize she had, because now she's getting into athletics, and she's at that age when the body starts to change a lot.
A lot of roads are crossed.
All of a sudden I realize I have to get her on a program. So this has become personal for me in that way, because now I have her doing a lot of these exercises that I'm going to show you guys today. Okay. But the first thing starts at the feet. So go ahead and take your shoes off for me. It
always starts with the feet, Dale.
It always starts with the feet, because whatever happens at the foot can really translate to the rest of what we call the kinetic chain. So what happens at your feet can affect not only your feet and ankles, but can affect your knees and your hips as well. So when I look at someone's feet, I have them take their shoes off, and I have them put their feet flat on the floor underneath their knees. So bring your feet back underneath your knees. And bring your feet apart a little bit, because I need to see your arches, because what happens at your feet and your arches are a big deal. So what your arches look like in sitting versus standing. And now I'm going to have my athlete stand up. So go ahead and stand up for me, Eddie. And I'm going to look at what happens to the arches.
They flatten.
So the arches in a lot of people will flatten down. Those arches that look really nice when they're sitting all of a sudden disappear when they're in a weight-bearing position. So an athlete that has that kind of fallen arch, and my daughter had the same thing. I didn't realize she had fallen arches till I did the evaluation, because just watching her walk around the house in shoes and things like that is not noticeable. But when you have someone in their socks or in their bare feet, you can see that arch collapse.
The water is so high.
When you have someone with this arch collapse like that, what happens is your feet turn in and it affects your knees turn in, then your hips internally rotate.
All the alignment changes.
So if you're an athlete like a basketball player or a volleyball player or a runner, what happens at your feet is going to be a big deal, because when you're jumping, it's going to affect what happens at your knees and your hips. When you run, it's going to affect what happens at your knees and your hips. So I always start with the feet and the ankles. If I have someone like Eddie or my daughter that has those arches that are collapsed, there's something simple we can do about it and recommend orthotics. So that's why I brought in these orthotics today. And I had a gentleman the other day I was talking to, because he had the same issue. I said, well, I think you need some orthotics. And he said, well, I got some orthotics. And he pulled out the orthotics that he had, and they were just super flimsy. They were really nothing more than a flat gel pad. They had no arch support at all. What I like about these Power Step orthotics, and these are ones that aren't expensive, we sell them in our clinic for $45. They're really reasonable, is they have a nice firm arch support. So when you put your foot on it, that arch support's firm. Okay, so Eddie, go ahead and put your foot on top of that. Okay, and as you can see, when he stands up now with that firm arch support there, that arch support's not going to disappear. When you get some of those flimsy orthotics, that arch support would completely go flat. But this gives some firmness to him, so that when he puts some weight on that orthotic, it's going to give some resistance there. So it's not completely hard, but it gives enough resistance to give him some support of that arch to keep his ankle and foot in normal alignment. Now when he runs or he stands up or walks or jumps, he's going to have the ankle and foot in good position, so that his knees and hips are in a good position. So that's the first thing I look at with the foot and ankle. The next thing I look at is flexibility. So making sure that they have the flexibility in the ankle. And now, like I said earlier, flexibility is not a huge part of injury prevention, but I believe it does have a significant component in the ankles, because you do see things like Achilles ruptures, sprains and strains. Ankle sprains is the #1 sports injury that we see. And the thing with ankle injuries is, once you have one ankle sprain, it increases your likelihood of having another ankle sprain very significantly. So if you have an ankle sprain and you just kind of get over it and you kind of wash it off and say in a couple weeks it feels better, and you don't do anything about it, you're at a really high incident rate of having that recur again. So you really need to do some therapy on those ankles, and that includes some things I'm going to show you today, but it includes flexibility, includes strengthening, includes plyometric activity, which is loading and unloading with some resistance to the ankles, and that's going to be important for the ankles, knees, and hips. We're going to show you those today as well. But the first two exercises I'm going to show you today are just for simple flexibility. So let's go ahead and stand up, Eddie.
Okay.
And I'm just going to turn this chair this way. You're going to put your hands on the chair. So the first one's a gastroc stretch. So most people know how to do a gastroc stretch. Let's put your right foot forward and keep your left foot back straight so we can see better on the camera. So bring your right foot forward more, and you're going to bend that front knee, and you're going to keep the back knee straight. Okay? So what we have here is we're stretching out the gastroc muscle. The gastroc muscle is not just a calf muscle, it's not just an ankle muscle, but it also crosses the knee as well. And a lot of people don't realize that gastroc, that calf muscle, crosses the knee. So it has an impact on not only the ankle, but the knee as well. When we're doing a stretch, we're going to hold that for about a 15-second hold.
I'm stretching my back straight leg, right?
And the back straight leg is the one that's getting stretched right now.
And
so we're going to hold that for about a 15-20 second hold and repeat that 2 or 3 times. And you don't want to bounce, you want to hold that.
Where am I supposed to feel the pressure? Right now?
You feel it down the back calf and the Achilles, you'll feel it.
And go forward as much as possible.
Go forward as much as possible, feel a good stretch. Okay? Now, the other muscle in the calf that a lot of people forget about is called the soleus muscle. It's deeper into the calf, but the soleus muscle does not cross the knee. The soleus muscle is just in the ankle. So what you're going to do to stretch the soleus muscle is you're going to bring your left foot back a little bit, so you're not bending as far, bring your right foot forward. And now you're going to bend both your knees. So the right foot stays forward instead of the left foot.
Right.
So right now, if you're not watching, if you're just listening, Eddy has one foot ahead of the other foot. Now he's going to bend both of his knees.
And Eddy's confused about left and right, like most would suspect.
And when he bends both of his knees now,
straight down.
Straight down. He's going to bend both knees straight down, but keep the heel down flat. Now he is stretching the soleus muscle in his back calf. So you want to make sure you stretch both the gastroc and the soleus muscles, because both those muscles impact the ankle. The gastroc will affect the ankle and the knee. So make sure you're stretching both those. And again, the same rules as the other one, 15-second hold 3 or 4 times. Okay?
I like that one.
So the next exercise we're going to do is a strengthening exercise.
Okay.
And this strengthening exercise is shown to reduce injury in both the ankle and the knee, and that's a single leg calf raise. So a single leg calf raise is the same position, and you're going to come up on, let's put all your weight on your left foot so we can see in the camera better.
Cool.
And you're just going to come up and down on your toes on the left side.
Just
so your right foot's
up
up in the air, up and down. Yep, and you're going to do about 15 to 20 of those. And these are really pretty difficult exercises. So if you're an older athlete, maybe you start with 10 repetitions. If you're a younger athlete, you might be able to knock out 20 or 30 a little bit easier. Your repetitions are a little bit slow. I usually say like 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down. So going up is 1, 2, down is 3, 4. So you slow it down, you're going to do really good contraction. So this exercise is shown to significantly reduce injury for your ankle and your knee. So that's a single leg calf raise.
Okay. That one I did in my life.
Okay?
Yeah.
Then the next exercise you're going to do is you're going to get into a half kneeling position. So one foot in front of the other foot.
Okay.
So put your left knee down.
Starting to sweat now. Thanks.
Okay. And you're going to hold on to this 10-pound dumbbell. And you can use a kettlebell or dumbbell. You can put it in both hands.
Okay.
So like you have a kettlebell holding in both hands. And so what we're doing is we're working out the front leg. So Eddy is now in a half kneeling position. His left knee is down on the ground. His right foot is out in front of him. That's called a half kneeling position.
This is a take a knee, wait for water in practice position.
And with the weight down low, all you're simply going to do is shift your weight forward over the front foot. Yep, shift your weight forward and then shift your weight back. And you're keeping the foot flat, the front foot is maintained flat, and Eddy is, if you're just listening at home, he's shifting his weight forward over that front foot and then back. And this is a really good strengthening activity for the ankle, for the foot that's in front of him. So it's helping to strengthen the motion that he has in full motion coming forward and back. And this is a really good injury prevention exercise for someone that's got recurrent issues with ankle sprains and strains.
It's a good stretch on the opposite hip, too.
It's a good stretch on the opposite hip. However, that's not what we're looking for this exercise. So if your back hip is limiting how far you can come forward, then you want to rotate that back hip out a little bit. So rotate it out towards the camera. Bring the knee out towards the camera. No,
You're telling me to shake my booty closer to the camera.
Bring this knee out this way a little bit.
I got you.
So you rotate it out.
Stance.
Yeah, widen your stance so that hip flexor is not limiting you as much with the ankle. Because really, we just want to get that front ankle working on this one.
All right, we need to take a break because I'm getting a cramp. News is next. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is my guest. The video fun will continue. Get on Facebook to see it. It's Teleforum. Yeah, I'm getting a cramp. Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM and 95.7 FM, along with Huntington Bank, are pleased to air a series of shows entitled Huntington Business Spotlight, shining a light on local businesses making a difference in our community. Tune in Thursday, March 16th from 9:10 a.m. until 10 a.m. with special guest John Hurtnecki from the Beehive. Putting the spotlight on local businesses, it's Huntington Business Spotlight, Thursday, March 16th at 9:10 a.m. right here on Beaver County Radio. 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM and 95.7 FM, along with BeaverCountyRadio.com. Join Beaver County Radio, Roberts Roadside Inn, and Skurlick Contracting for a tribute to a legend on Wednesday night, April the 5th from 7 to 9 p.m. as we pay tribute to our friend and Beaver County broadcasting legend Bob Berkman on the patio at Roberts Roadside Inn, where Bob hosted the Coach's Corner for over 30 years. Bob Berkman's partner for many years, Tom Hayes, will return to Beaver County Radio to host this special Coach's Corner tribute to Bob. Beaver County Radio will have live coverage starting at 7 p.m. on Beaver County Radio and beavercountyradio.com. You can also watch the show streaming live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Joining the team to help us celebrate are Electric Garage Door Sales, McGee Heating and Cooling, the Community College of Beaver County, Gazette the Optometric, Fryer Transportation, the J&J Spratt Funeral Home, Suman Automotive, Plasmeyer Towing, Tri-State Waters, My Hero Sub Shop, and Beaver County Radio.
Beaver County Radio's news source. 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com. Here's Curtis Walsh.
Good morning. We can expect some sunshine today with a high near 45 degrees. We'll have a complete Beaver County radio weather forecast after this look at news. State representatives from across the state met yesterday at the Darlington Township Volunteer Fire Department for a hearing featuring state and local leaders. Approximately 25% of Pennsylvania's House of Representatives were in attendance, as well as a large group of community members. State Department leaders stated that there were still questions to be answered regarding the derailment. They reported that less people have been contacting them for their services, a number that is now in the teens after being in the hundreds. Results were given for an ACE survey completed by 143 residents, and the most common answer was 68% said they wanted to know if it was safe to plant a garden. State Representative Jim Marshall asked if there has been any diagnosis for people with health symptoms. Dr. Deborah Bogan of the Department of Health said it's too early to say if people's health symptoms are connected to the derailment or not. When asked about long-term health effects, the Department of Health said they are taking priority to monitor and conduct health assessment surveys rather than analyzing anybody's actual health. 87 first responders were also given the survey, with around half reporting ear, nose, and throat symptoms. Whether or not Norfolk Southern is still being relied on for any information, Rich Negrin of the DEP replied 0% of their information is being trusted, noting that they are still receiving their information to compare alongside alternate reports. When asked where waste soil from the site is being taken, there was a brief pause before it was said that the EPA knows where it is going and it's being worked out, with no further details on locations other than that they were pretty sure none of it was coming to Pennsylvania. Local leaders in the hearing included Representative Josh Kell, Representative Rob Matzey, and Representative Jim Marshall. Darlington Township leaders and County Commissioner Dan Camp participated in the local panel. Dan Camp spoke on behalf of the county commissioners, although Jack Manning and Tony Amadeo were in attendance. Norfolk Southern was invited but did not attend the meeting. Lifting spirits up by tearing buildings down, that's the plan for the city of Beaver Falls as it seeks to continue its blight removal process. Matt Durzik has further details from Monday night's city council meeting.
During the Beaver Falls City Council meeting on Tuesday night, the board unanimously approved 2023 ARPA project parcels for the city to buy for the sake of blight removal and potential property development. Fire Chief Mark Stowe talked about the progress that has been made thus far on blight removal.
Mount Washington, of course, we're concerned, getting everything taken care of up there. And thankfully, there's only 3 buildings left up there that we consider blight. All 3 of those will be purchased and brought down in the very near future. So Mount Washington section of the city, after those 3 are down, will be blight free, which is a huge accomplishment over the last several years. As everybody knows, Mount Washington was in dire condition. So that part of the city is taken care of.
The full story from last night's City Council meeting can be found at beavercountyradio.com. From Beaver Falls, I'm Matt Durzik for Beaver County Radio News.
Teacher contract negotiations are continuing in the Hopewell School District. Here's Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Giordano with more.
The teacher's contract was set to expire on June 30th, 2022, but no agreement has been reached, and teachers are working under the old contract, according to solicitor John Salopek. Mr. Salopek's statement came Tuesday night after a few residents said they heard the teachers were working with no contract. He told residents, "Be cautious of rumors." He said progress is being made in the talks to reach a new contract. He told those present that 3 board members are also involved in the ongoing negotiations. If the teachers were to strike, they would give Superintendent Dr. Jeff Belts 48 hours notice, and he would notify the proper district officials about the operation of classes in the district's buildings. The next negotiations are on Monday, March 20th, 2023. This is Sandy Giordano reporting for Beaver County Radio.
Ohio has filed a lawsuit against Norfolk Southern to make sure it pays for the cleanup and environmental damage caused by the train derailment. The state's attorney general said Tuesday that the federal lawsuit also seeks to force the company to pay for groundwater and soil monitoring in the years ahead and economic losses in the village of East Palestine and surrounding areas. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost says the fallout from the February 3rd derailment will reverberate for many years. Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw has apologized for the impact the derailment has had on East Palestine.
Here's the Beaver County forecast on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
We can expect sunny skies today with a high near 45 degrees. We'll have increasing clouds tonight going down to a low of around 30. Increasing clouds likely tomorrow with a high near 56. Rain moves in Friday with a high near 55. Mostly cloudy Saturday with a high near 38. And partly sunny on Sunday with a high near 37. That's a look at the news for now. I'm Curtis Walsh on 99.3 FM, 95.7 FM, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming live around the world at beavercountyradio.com.
It is Teleforum, and it's Teleforum on Facebook. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is here. It's cold outside, but I think I'm about to get warmed up. It's 28 degrees, the sun is shining, and Dale, if you missed the first half, it was about the ankles. The second half of what we're going to do, it's about the knees, and if
That's
at
right.
all possible, go to Facebook, the station Facebook page, or go to MRS Physical Therapy Facebook page. If you're listening and you want to see this ridiculousness that Dale puts me through, they are available on both of our websites, MRS Physical Therapy and the radio station website. You can go at a later time and look and go, he was right. What are we doing?
So we're talking about injury prevention for the lower body. So we're talking about the hips, knees, and ankles. We started at the ankle. We talked about proper footwear. We showed you some exercises. Now we're going to go up to the knee. Keep in mind that we do this personal injury prevention testing at MRS Physical Therapy and Cranberry Physical Therapy in our offices. You don't need a doctor's script to come in and do it. So if this is for yourself, if you're an older athlete, if you have a kid or a grandkid that you want to get tested for, we do the full chain of testing for looking at things that might be limiting for your young athlete or your older athlete, as well as some simple exercises we can provide them to do to help prevent injury. And some of these exercises that I'm showing you today will researched and shown to decrease injury up to 50% in our athletes. So they're really good and easy exercises to do. What we didn't talk about is dosage. So it doesn't take a lot of dosage, meaning how much time you have to spend doing these exercises. Research shows that you only have to spend about 30 minutes a week doing these exercises. So you can split that up, 15 minutes twice a week.
5 minutes a day, take Sunday off.
Yep, and do these exercises. 30 minutes a week is all research shows is what you need to do for these injury prevention exercises. And you need to perform them for about 9 months of the year. So it's not like you're doing them all the time, but you can do them, pre-season, post-season to help reduce injury for your younger athletes. So next we're moving up to the knee. The knee is probably the most significant because we see ACL tears all the time. So knees we see sprains and strains. The ankles we see sprains and strains. Sometimes we see Achilles ruptures in the ankle, but that's kind of rare. But we see ACL injuries all the time. Sometimes it's a partial tear where you don't need a repair. Sometimes it's a full tear. When you have a full tear, usually if you want to continue to compete as an athlete, you're going to have to get that surgically repaired. And that's anywhere from a 9-month to a full year recovery time for an ACL reconstruction. I've had both my knees done for different injuries, I've been through it. I know the pain, I know what it feels like, and it takes a long time to get back to what you're doing before. And like I said, 1 in 4 athletes, once they tear their ACL, they're going to have a re-tear in their lifetime.
Is there something biological or something genetic? Because you'll see a guy will tear his right ACL, and then a year later, he'll tear his left.
That's not uncommon at all, to have a re-tear or to end up tearing both sides.
Okay.
Like I said, 1 in 4 athletes will re-tear their ACL or have a tear on the other side, and only about 50% of the athletes get back to what they were originally doing before, either being a specific sport or a specific level of activity. So protecting that knee, protecting that ACL is a huge deal for our injury prevention program that we have at MRS Physical Therapy and Cranberry Physical Therapy. So a couple things we look at. First, we look at what happens at the foot. We already talked about that. We want to make sure the foot has good support, good arch support, so I recommend a good orthotic. So that helps to protect the knee as well.
I have that exact pair. Those are outstanding.
And yeah, I wear the same exact ones as well. They're not expensive. They're only $45. They work for most athletes. Okay, so the first thing we look at, or the next thing we look at, is your jumping ability. So you're going to face me, and all you're going to do is just a simple jump up off the ground and back down. So this is really good for us to assess, especially for our basketball and volleyball athletes.
Am I trying to jump high, or am I just showing you that I can jump?
I don't want you to get hurt, so just do a simple jump. Just get some air underneath your feet.
It's a lot of faith, Dale. I appreciate it.
Just some air underneath your feet. It's good.
Right?
Yep.
Hey.
Okay, good. So
my butt.
A lot of our athletes, when we see them jump, their knees come in when they land, or their knees come in when they go up, and that's an injury prevention an injury possibility when you don't have good control of your knees. So if your knees come in when you jump or your knees come up when you land, that's going to increase your likelihood of having a knee injury.
Did I have good knees when I jumped?
You had good knees. Your knees are actually out. Okay, and we see this a lot more in our female athletes, especially our basketball players and our volleyball players. When they jump, their knees come in, or when they land, their knees come in, and that's indicating that they have some likelihood of injuring those knees. So a couple things we do is, one thing is we do strengthening. Another thing we do is teach mechanics. So we teach proper mechanics. So when they jump and land, they jump like a feather, and they land with recoil like a spring. So you want to jump, and you want to land softly. And especially make sure those knees aren't coming in. When the knees come in, I always look at the ankles, making sure they have good ankle support. And then I look at their musculature and their hips and their knees, making sure they have good quality. There's not any limitations strength-wise or flexibility-wise. And then we go to mechanics. But I'm going to show you one exercise that an athlete can do that's going to reduce their likelihood of a knee strain up to 50%.
Okay.
So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and turn your back to me and get on your knees. Okay, so like I said earlier in the show, there's different ways to grade these exercises. So I'm not going to have you do the hard part of the exercise. I'm going to have you do the easy part of the exercise.
Down position and wrestling.
So this is called a Nordic hamstring curl. So if you're listening at home, you want to Google Nordic hamstring curl if you're not watching us right now. Jot this down. You might want to ask your grandkid, have you ever done a Nordic hamstring curl? Because this is a really simple exercise to reduce knee injury, specifically knee strain, up to 50% in your young athletes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold on to your ankles here. As I hold on to your ankles, you're going to bring your body forward towards the chair, and then back. But you're not going to use your arms. Okay, you're just using your leg muscles, and then come back up. So this is a kind of a graded way to do the hamstring curl, the Nordic hamstring curl. Now the true exercise, which I'm not going to make you do unless you think you can do it, is coming all the way down flat to the ground and coming back up again.
What dignity is left at this point, Dale? We might as well try.
Okay, so this is the full exercise of the Nordic hamstring curl. So you're going to keep your upper body straight. Okay, so you keep your hips straight and your shoulders up. As you land, catch yourself with your hands so you don't hurt your face. Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to hold you here. So go ahead and come straight down onto your hands.
This has got face plant written all over it, so I go like that.
Yep, and then come back up. Yep, and then come down again.
No.
And come back up. So if you're doing it properly, you should feel a lot of work coming in your hamstrings there.
That hurts on my kneecaps a lot.
So yeah, you can do this one on a pillow or on a piece of foam or something like that. That'll take the strain off the kneecaps. But that's called the Nordic hamstring curl. And that's a really great exercise to do. It will help reduce your likelihood of knee injury up to 50% in your younger athletes.
The jumping was okay. I didn't like that one. You can feel that because I'm not strong enough to do it like a plank.
Yeah.
You can feel it in your hamstrings, but you can also feel the other muscle groups jumping in, trying to help.
Well, that's the key part of this. So a lot of us, when we're doing ACL protection plans, we're just working on the hamstrings. But research shows that your core activating with the hamstrings
absolutely
is the biggest deal. So I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what the purpose of that exercise is that it incorporates your core muscles in addition to your hamstring muscles. And that's the true deal what helps to reduce injury. Research shows that getting your core activated in addition to those hamstrings will help reduce your knee injury.
Well, then I'm healed. Okay.
Okay.
Next.
So next we're going to move up to the hip.
I remember why I liked gym class so much.
So
the hip?
So the hip, we see different things in the hip. We don't see tears a whole lot in the hips. We see mostly sprains and strains. Sometimes you get like a hip pointer, a tendonitis, some kind of pain in the hip. But what we do see is groin strains. And groin strains are a big deal for your athlete. And you see this in soccer players, you see this in hockey players, you see this in football players. And anyone that's had a groin injury or followed a player that's had a groin injury, it can take a long time to recover.
When you look down and you see the inside of your legs purple, you're off for a while.
You had a micro tear in that groin. And then the blood flow, you see that bruising
very bad.
But injury prevention for a groin injury is huge. So if we can prevent injuries for the groin, that's huge for our athletes, especially our football players, our hockey players, our soccer players. So this exercise that I'm going to show you next is a Copenhagen side lying exercise, and it helps to reduce groin injuries up to 50%. Okay, another tough exercise, not going to lie. Okay,
worse than the thing I just did.
Maybe
the Nordic thing.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, when I hear Copenhagen, I think it's more relaxed, but I'll trust you. Okay.
So this one, actually, let's do this. So you're going to get into, do you know what a side plank is? You're going to get into a side plank facing the camera here. So you're going to lie on your left side.
I'm going to lie on my left side?
Yep, lie on your left side on the floor. On the floor, please, yep. Facing the camera.
Yeah. Well, no, they got to see my expression as I'm forced to do this. Sure.
Okay, so that's a side plank with your elbow down. Nope, stay up on your elbow for me.
Like that?
Okay. Yep, and a true side plank is you're bringing your hips up off the ground. So only your elbow and your ankles touching the ground. So if you can get that's a side plank right there. Okay? So a side plank alone is a really tough activity for a lot of people to do. So this next level of activity makes it even a little more difficult. So this can be either done with another person, and that's what we're going to try here, or you can use a chair, so your foot up on the chair.
All right.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold. So right now, Eddie's lying on his left side. I'm going to hold his top leg up in the air, and he's going to get back up in that side plank position.
What do I do with my left leg? Can I use it to push?
You're going to start out using.
I'm going to need to, aren't I?
Yeah, you're going to start out using your bottom leg to push, and then you're going to try to bring that bottom leg up to the top leg, and then back down again. And your count's 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's great. And we can grade that by having him put, hopefully Eddie gets back up off the floor here. And we can grade that activity by having him put his foot on the chair if you don't have someone at home to help you out with that one. Or he could have his knee bent so he doesn't have as long of a lever arm. The top knee could be bent, the bottom knee could be bent, both knees could be bent. But that's a really high level activity. You impressed me there, Eddie. That was really good.
Same thing happens. You can feel where it's supposed to be, but you can feel everywhere else trying to help.
And that's why the research shows this activity is so important for reducing groin strains, is because it activates your core muscles in addition to your hip adductors, which is your groin muscle.
That's huge.
So activating your core in addition to the hips, that's what makes the big difference, research has showed us, for helping reduce groin injury up to 50% with just that one exercise.
So I did good.
You did great.
Okay.
You ready to sit back down?
Keep talking.
Okay, so we talked about...
This is normally the point at practice, Dale, where the coaches would blow the whistle and the managers would all bring us popsicles.
You got popsicles, wow.
One break in the summer before season started, when you're doing 3 a days, yes, there were popsicle breaks.
There's popsicle day.
Yep.
So what we showed you today are injury prevention opportunities that you can do for yourself if you're an older athlete, or you can recommend for your younger athlete, whether that's your kid or your grandkid. Injury prevention programs are great. The group programs where you go to these sports performance places, work on a certain activity. But research shows that you have to do something to complement that. To complement that is doing these specific individual testing, and that individual testing will show you where your young athlete or where you yourself fit into the injury possibilities, whether that's your ankles, your knees, and your hips, and then we provide you some specific exercises geared towards that joint that's limiting for you.
How much of the testing is about strength and how much is about flexibility?
It's much more about strength than flexibility.
Okay.
Flexibility is a component of it, but it's a minor component. Research shows, which was a surprise to a lot of us. A lot of us thought that it was going to be a lot higher flexibility-wise, but research shows it's not. Flexibility is a small component, especially in the ankle, but there's also a component of flexibility for the knee and the hip, especially if someone's had surgery to the knee. We want to make sure they have enough motion. We want to make sure the motion's equal to the other side. A lot of people don't realize that knee extension is much more important than knee flexion when you're recovering from a knee injury. So even a little bit of hyperextension, you want to have that equal to both sides. But we look at that with our testing. We look at what your flexibility is, your strength is, and your functional strength. So it's not just your strength being, can you lift a 10-pound dumbbell, or am I resisting, against my hand? But we do functional testing, which means, are you able to do a single leg squat? Are you able to come up and down on your heels on a single leg a certain number of times? Mm-hmm. Are you able to shift your weight outside of your base of support and maintain your balance? How far can you step forward and step backward in different directions? So this is functional testing that we do, that we incorporate to identify where the limitations are in your athlete, whether you're a young athlete or an older athlete, and then what you can do to prevent that, prevent injury for that. So we do this testing at both my clinics, MRS Physical Therapy in Bridgewater, as well as Cranberry Physical Therapy in Cranberry. If you want to do a test, you can give us a call in Bridgewater, MRS Physical Therapy. The number is 724-728-7550. Or if you want to do the test at Cranberry Physical Therapy, that office is in Cranberry Township on Route 19, right next to North Park Lounge. That number is 724-591-8121. You don't need a doctor's script. Just call us up and we'll get you scheduled for a test. Or if you have a current injury or a diagnosis that you're concerned about, we can help fix that too and get you back to sport using the specific techniques that we talked about today, not only to get you to return to sport, but help prevent further injury down the line.
These tests, they're not just for somebody that wants to stay competitive or stay athletic. There's a diagnostic benefit, just somebody coming in off the street and you doing these same tests, isn't there?
Absolutely. No matter what your activity level is. Like I said, a lot of older individuals are playing pickleball now. Mm-hmm. These tests are helpful for people that are playing pickleball. There's a lot of activity with pickleball. It's not as hard as maybe tennis, but there's still a lot of, shifting your weight, moving side to side quickly, moving forward, backward quickly, and injury prevention is key for these older athletes as well as the younger athletes.
There's a lot of opportunity to roll an ankle.
Yeah, ankles, like I said, ankle sprains are probably the number one thing that we see as far as injury goes. And once you have an ankle sprain, you're in a high incident likelihood of it happening again. So if you if you have a grandkid that rolled their ankle when they're 12 years old and now they're getting a little bit older, they should definitely work on that. It's not something you should just say, well, they're feeling better now, they're good to go. There's likely some underlying cause that caused the ankle to roll, and once it is sprained and once there's a weakness that's started, you need to work on that specifically to get it stronger again.
How much of a benefit is there? You're walking through the drugstore and you see one of those ankle braces they lace in the front. Or same token, you see one of those knee sleeves. How much do those actually help?
That's a great question. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was on my list of topics to talk about today, and I almost forgot about it.
There you go.
So
get me sweaty. I'm productive.
So I'm a little bit cautious about some. What you want, you don't want to over-stabilize a joint with a brace. And the reason why is if you overstabilize something with a brace, then you're causing two problems when you're trying to correct something. The one problem you're causing is you're becoming dependent on that brace and you're not working on the strengthening of your actual body and muscles to keep that joint strong. The other thing that happens when you stabilize something is it puts the forces on another joint in the body. So the story I wanted to tell was about a volleyball team. So there was a local volleyball team whose coach was so concerned about her athletes having ankle sprains because she kept having ankle sprain issues with her volleyball athletes that she made everybody in her team brace up. Everyone had to wear ankle braces.
Team rule.
Didn't matter if you had ankle issues or not, everybody braced up. What happened next is all of these athletes started to have knee injuries. They started to tear their ACLs.
Yeah.
So because they overbraced their ankles, they started to have ACL knee injuries because they overbraced a joint, and that put all the forces now onto a different joint in the body.
It transferred the torque.
She thought she was correcting a problem, but she actually caused a bigger problem because, in my opinion, having an ACL tear is a much bigger issue than an ankle sprain. So you really need to do correction of whatever's going on through strengthening, flexibility, plyometric exercises, some of the exercises I showed you today. You don't want to just brace up. Now, if it's an acute injury, by all means, you might need to brace up just to help support that joint before it's ready to start recovery process. Like if you had a recent ankle sprain or strain, you might wear an air cast for a week or two just to stabilize that joint while it's healing, so you're not stressing that joint continually. But once the acute process is over with, you need to rehabilitate that appropriately, and that does not typically include wearing a brace long term. You want to you make sure that you're doing the proper exercises to strengthen the ankle joint, the knee joint, the hip joint, so that you don't need bracing to have that supportive nature, because you're going to cause more problems with bracing that joint, in my opinion.
Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy is my guest. We've got about a minute left. What did we not get to that you wanted to get to? I had fun. I was flashing back to gym class. All you needed was a whistle and a pair of gym shorts or coach's shorts.
I'll bring that. Well, I won't bring the coach's shorts, but maybe the whistle next time.
Good call.
Just keep in mind, injury prevention is key for our young athletes as well as older athletes. If we can prevent an injury, that's a lot easier to do than recovering from an injury, because once you have an injury, the likelihood of it re-injuring again is very high. Mm-hmm. So if you want to take part in our injury prevention program or our injury prevention testing program, give us a call at MRS Physical Therapy, which is in Bridgewater, right in Stone Point Landing. That number is 724-728-7550, or call us at Cranberry Physical Therapy on Route 19, right next to North Park Lounge. That number is 724-591-8121. You can always email me individually at d.reckless@mrsphysicaltherapy.com, or check out our website at mrsphysicaltherapy.com. And keep in mind, you don't need a doctor's script to come see us. You can just come to see us without that.
An hour with you always goes quick. I appreciate it. Dale Reckless of MRS Physical Therapy. Teleforum continues. Yeah, we'll start screaming, but I'm loose now. It'll be more comfortable. It's Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
Ever been sitting minding your own business and suddenly discovered that the world is spinning rapidly of its own volition? It can be very frightening. Vertigo, or the illusion of motion, isn't just a sensation you get when you peer off a tall building. It's a problem in the body's internal balancing system, creating the sensation that you're moving even when you're not. And you're not the only one who has it. It happens to more people than you realize. Treatment of this condition needs to be seen by a professional. It's time to call Dale Reckless at MRS Physical Therapy. Chronic cases of vertigo can persist for days or even years. Choose MRS Physical Therapy to help you now. You don't have to live with vertigo. Call Dale Reckless at MRS Physical Therapy in Bridgewater and Cranberry. Visit mrsphysicaltherapy.com.
Hey, Peanuts! Tune in to Beaver County Radio on Wednesday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. for the all-new Hey Peanuts Sports Show. Just like the Peanut Guy has his opinion from the cheap seat, so do hosts Scott Kincaid and Brian Pasquale. The pair will discuss what's going on in the world of sports both locally and nationally. They'll also take your phone calls. The show will also be streamed live on the Beaver County Radio Facebook page and YouTube channel. So make plans to tune in this and every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on Beaver County Radio, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com.
It's always the right time to shop the Hopewell Shopping Center, no matter what the season, no matter what the reason. It's truly your neighborhood shopping place with such a large variety of businesses that offer food, shopping, fine dining and quick serving restaurants, personal services, and recreation. The Hopewell Shopping Center will be your one stop for everything you need whenever you need it. Just click on BeaverCountyRadio.com, the Hopewell Shopping Center merchant directory, for a complete look of merchants today, and get shopping at your neighborhood shopping place, the Hopewell Shopping Center.